Hi everybody, it's Mrs. Callahan. First of all, I want to start by saying I am so sorry. It has been so long since we have read Artemis Fowl together. I read a couple chapters last week and I'm having some technical difficulties with my computer where the videos weren't uploading properly and the files were getting corrupt. So I'm going to try and read to you on my phone and we'll see how that goes. Hopefully you're able to see this. And I promise you, as far as I can help it, there will be no more long stretches like this. We'll try to catch up. Maybe I'll read some extra chapters this week, okay? So you might notice I'm not coming to you from my usual space, either on my couch or on my front steps, right? The room behind me looks a little bit strange. It's not quite finished. Since the last time I saw you, my family has adopted or gotten 7 baby chickens. And we have this little weird unfinished side room in my house that we usually use for storage, but it is the perfect baby chicken room. Do you want to see them? Maybe. Over here. There they are. 6 of them are out and about, it looks like. They are just about 1 week old. We just got them last Tuesday. They are very fluffy, and you're probably going to hear them peeping the whole time I'm reading. They seem to come out and are pretty active when someone's in this room with them. So that's why I'm coming to you from this room, because I'm trying to keep them company. And plus, my house is a little bit noisy. I'm sure you can relate. So let's see if I can get myself set back up here. Okay. Okay, so I'm here to read Artemis Fowl to you. If you remember, when we last left Artemis Fowl, he had just figured out a way to start to translate the book that he had tricked from the fairy we met in chapter 1, right? All right, so chapter 3. Let me grab the book. Here we go. Chapter 3 is called Holly. Now, it's kind of a long chapter, so what I'm going to do is about halfway through this chapter, I'm going to stop. We'll pause, we'll say our goodbyes, and then I'm going to read the second half of the chapter. So that way you don't have to sit and listen. It's a very long chapter, and you might get kind of wiggly. You might need a little bit of a break. So we'll stop in the middle, and then the second half of the chapter will be posted in a new video, okay? All right, so here we go. Chapter 3, Holly. And if I think back, remember we read the back of the book together? And it mentions a fairy, Captain Holly Short of the Leprechaun Unit. So I'm wondering if this Holly could be that Holly. Let's find out together. Holly Short was laying in bed, silently fuming. Nothing unusual about this. Leprechauns in general were not known for their geniality. That means friendliness. But Holly was in exceptionally bad mood, even for a fairy. Technically she was an elf, fairy being a general term. She was a leprechaun too, but that was just a job. Perhaps a description would be more helpful than a lecture on fairy genealogy. Holly Short had nut brown skin, cropped auburn hair, and hazel eyes. Can you picture that for a minute? Nut brown skin. Cropped means kind of short. Auburn is like a reddish brown hair. And hazel, which is kind of like a greenish brown. Those are her eyes. Her nose had a hook, and her mouth was plump and cherubic, which was appropriate considering Cupid was her great-grandfather. Her mother was a European elf with a fiery temper and a willowy figure. Holly, too, had a slim frame with a long, tapered fingers, perfect for wrapping around a buzz baton. Her ears, of course, were pointed. At exactly 3 feet in height, Holly was only a centimeter below the fairy average. 3 feet in height. So 3 feet in height, 36 inches, 3 rulers stacked up. Can you picture that? She's bigger than I thought. I thought she'd be smaller. But even 1 centimeter can make an awful lot of difference when you don't have many to spare. Commander Root was the cause of Holly's distress. Root had been on Holly's case since day 1. The commander had decided to take offense at the fact that the first female officer in Recon's history had been assigned to his squad. Recon was a notoriously dangerous posting with a high fatality rate, and Root didn't think it was any place for a girlie. Well, he was just going to have to get used to the idea, because Holly Short had no intention of quitting for him or anybody else. Good for her. Though she'd never admit it, another possible cause for Holly's irritability was the ritual. She'd been meaning to perform it for several moons now, but somehow there would just never seem to be any time. And if Root found out she was running low on magic, she'd be transferred to traffic for sure. Holly rolled off her futon and stumbled into the shower. There was one advantage of living near the Earth's core. The water was always hot. So she lives underground, okay. No natural light, of course, but that was a small pace to pry for privacy. Underground. The last human-free zone. There was nothing like coming home after a long day on the job, switching off your shield, and sinking into a bubbling slime pool. Ooh, bliss. The fairy suited up, zipping up the dull green jumpsuit up to her chin and strapping on her helmet. Leprechaun uniforms were stylish these days. Not like that top-of-the-morning costume the Force had to wear back in the old days. Buckled shoes and knickerbockers. Honestly, no wonder leprechauns were such ridiculous figures in human folklore. Still, probably better that way. If the mud people knew the word leprechaun actually originated from leprechaun, an elite bunch of lower elements police. Lower elements police. Can you see how they print leprechaun? Ready? Let's see if I can get it. Right there. Capital L-E-P, recon. And it looks like she's saying the lower elements police, L-E-P. They'd probably take steps to stamp them out. Better to stay inconspicuous and let the humans have their stereotypes. With the moon already rising on the surface, there was no time for a proper breakfast. Holly grabbed the remains of a nettle smoothie from the cooler and drank it in the tunnels. As usual, there was chaos in the main thoroughfare. Airborne sprites jammed the avenue like stones in a bottle. The gnomes weren't helping either, lumbering along with their big swinging behinds blocking 2 lanes. Swear-toads infested every damp patch, cursing like sailors. That particular breed began as a joke, but had multiplied into an epidemic. Someone lost their wand over that one. Holly battled through the crowds to the police station. There was already a riot outside Spud's Spud Emporium. Lep Corporal Newt was already trying to sort it out. Good luck to him. Nightmare. At least Holly got the chance to work above ground. The Lep station doors were crammed with protesters. The Goblin Dwarf turf war had flared up again, and every morning hordes of angry parents showed up demanding the release of their innocent offspring. Holly snorted. If there actually was an innocent goblin, Holly Short had yet to meet him. They were clogging up the cells now, howling gang chants and hurling fireballs at each other. Holly shuddered her way into the throng. "Coming through," she grunted. "Police business." They were on her like flies on a stinkworm. "My grumple is innocent. Police brutality. Officer, could you take my baby and his blankie? He can't sleep without it." Holly set her visor to reflect and ignored them all. Once upon a time, the uniform would have earned you some respect, but not anymore. Now you were a target. "Excuse me, officer, but I seem to have misplaced my jar of warts." "Pardon me, young elf, but my cat's climbed a stalactite." Or, "If you have a minute, Captain, could you tell me how to get to the Fountain of Youth?" Holly shuddered. Tourists. She had troubles of her own, more than she knew, as she was about to find out. In the station lobby, a kleptomaniac dwarf was busy picking the pockets of everyone else in the booking line, including the officer he was handcuffed to. Holly gave him a swipe in the backside with her buzz baton. The electric charge singed the seat of his leather pants. "What you doing there, Mulch?" Mulch started, contraband dropping from his sleeves. "Officer Short," he whined, his face a mask of regret. "Can't help myself. It's my nature." So he was kind of stealing things from people's pockets. Kleptomaniac means someone who steals things, and he was taking things from people's pockets, and Holly caught him. "I know that, Mulch, and it's our nature to throw you in the cell for a couple of centuries." She winked at the dwarf's arresting officer. "Nice to see you're staying alert." The elf blushed, kneeling to pick up his wallet and badge. Holly forged past Root's office, hoping she would make it to her cubicle before... "Short! Get in here!" Holly sighed. "Oh well, here we go again." Stowing her helmet under her arm, Holly smoothed the creases from her uniform and stepped into Commander Root's office. Root's face was purple with rage. This was more or less his general state of existence, a fact that had earned him the nickname Beetroot. There was an office pool running on how long he had before his heart exploded. The smart money was on half a century, at the outside. Commander Root was tapping the moon meter on his wrist. "Well," he demanded, "what time do you call this?" Holly could feel her own face colorizing. She was barely a minute late. There were at least a dozen officers on this shift who hadn't even reported in yet, but Root always singled her out for persecution. "The thoroughfare," she mumbled lamely. "There were 4 lanes down." "Don't insult me with your excuses," roared the captain. "You know what the city center is like. Get up a few minutes earlier." It was true. She did know what Haven was like. Holly Short was city elf born and bred. Since the humans had begun experimenting with mineral drilling, more and more fairies had been driven out of the shallow forts and into the depth and security of Haven City. The metropolis was overcrowded and underserviced. And now there was a lobby to allow automobiles in the pedestrianized city center, as if the place wasn't smelly enough already with those country gnomes lumbering around the place. Root was right. She should get up a bit earlier. She wouldn't, not until everyone else was forced to. "I know what you're thinking," said Root. "Why am I picking on you every day? Why don't I ever bawl out those other layabouts?" Holly said nothing, but agreement was written all over her face. "I'll tell you why, shall I?" Holly risked a nod. "It's because you're a girl." Holly felt her fingers curl into fists. She knew it. "But not for the reasons you think," continued Root. "You are the first girl in recon. Ever. You're a test case. A beacon. There are a million fairies out there watching your every move. There are a lot of hopes riding on you. But there's a lot of prejudice against you, too. The future of law enforcement is in your hands. And at the moment, I'd say it's a little heavy." Holly blinked. Root had never said anything like this before. Usually it was just, "Fix your helmet, stand up straight, blah, blah, blah." "You have to be the best you can be, Short, and that has to be better than anybody else." Root sighed, sinking into a swivel chair. "I don't know, Holly. Ever since that Hamburg incident." Holly winced. The Hamburg incident had been a total disaster. One of the perps had skipped out to the surface and tried to bargain with the mud people for asylum. Root had to stop time, call in the retrieval squad, and do 4 memory wipes. A lot of police time wasted. All her fault. The commander took a form from his desk. "It's no use. I've made up my mind. I'm putting you on traffic and bringing in the Corporal Frond." "Frond!" exploded Holly. "She's an airhead. You can't make her the test case." Root's face turned an even deeper shade of purple. "I can, and I will." "Why shouldn't I? You've never given me your best. Either that or your best just isn't good enough." "Sorry, Short. You had your chance." The commander turned back to his paperwork. The meeting was over. Holly could only stand there, aghast. She'd blown it. The best career opportunity she was ever likely to get, and she tossed it into the gutter. One mistake and her future was past. It wasn't fair. Holly felt an uncharacteristic anger take hold of her, but she swallowed it. This time, it was no time to lose her temper. "Commander Root, sir, I feel I deserve one more chance." Root didn't even look up from the paperwork. "And why is that?" Holly took a deep breath. "Because of my record, sir. It speaks for itself, apart from the Hamburg thing. 10 successful recons, not a single memory wipe or time spart apart from the Hamburg thing," completed Root. Holly took a chance. "If I were a male, one of your precious sprites, we wouldn't even be having this conversation." Root glanced up sharply. "Now just a minute, Captain Short." He was interrupted by the beeping of one of the phones on his desk. Then 2. Then 3. A giant view screen crackled into life on the wall behind him. Root jabbed the speaker button, putting all the callers on conference. "Yes? We've got a runner." Root nodded. "Anything on Scopes?" Scopes was the shop name for the shrouded trackers attached to American communications satellites. "Yep," said caller 2. "Big blip in Europe. Southern Italy. No shield." Root cursed. An unshielded fairy could be seen by mortal eyes. That wasn't so bad if the perp was humanoid. "Classification?" "Bad news, Commander," said the third caller. "We've got us a rogue troll. So it seems as though magical creatures have some sort of shield that doesn't allow humans to see them. And it seems like one, a troll, which doesn't look like a human at all, has lost their shield and they're kind of running amok, so maybe humans can see them. And that seems like an emergency. Root rubbed his eyes. Why did these things always happen on his watch? Holly could understand his frustrations. Trolls were the meanest of the deep tunnel creatures. They wandered the labyrinth, preying on anything unlucky enough to cross their path. Their tiny brains had no room for rules or restraint. Occasionally one found its way into the shaft of a pressure elevator. Usually the concentrated air fried them, but sometimes one survived and was blasted to the surface. Driven crazy by pain and even the tiniest amount of light, they would generally proceed to destroy everything in their path. Root shook his head rapidly, recovering himself. Okay, Captain Short, looks like you'll get your chance. You're running hot, I take it? Yes, sir, lied Holly, too aware that Root would suspend her immediately if he knew she'd neglected the ritual. Good. Then sign yourself out a sidearm and proceed to the target area. So I'm thinking about this ritual, and it sounds like it's something she must do to make sure her magic is the best that it can be. And she hasn't been doing it, but I'm not quite sure why. I don't really know. I'd have my thoughts, but think about that for a minute. And now it seems like she's got a big job in front of her, one that her whole career could rest on. And her commander just asked her, are you running hot? Which means, are you full of magic? And she lied to him. I don't know. I think about how all stories tend to go, and oftentimes when our characters don't tell the truth, as in real life, things don't always work out for them. So I'm kind of predicting this might not work out for Holly. I don't know. I might be wrong. I've never read the book before, so I don't know. Think for a moment what you might be thinking. Do you have a prediction right now? Give you a minute to think. All right, let's see. Holly glanced at the view screen. Scopes were sending high-res shots of an Italian fortified town. A red dot was moving rapidly through the countryside toward the human population. Do a thorough reconnaissance and report in. Do not attempt a retrieval. Is that understood? Yes, sir. We lost 6 men to troll attacks last quarter. 6 men! And that was below ground, in familiar territory. I understand, sir. Root pursed his lips doubtfully. Do you understand, Short? Do you really? I think so, sir. Have you ever seen what a troll can do to flesh and bone? No, sir, not up close. Good. Let's not make today your first time. Understood. Root glared at her. I don't know why it is, Captain Short, but whenever you start agreeing with me, I get decidedly nervous. Root was right to be nervous. If he'd known how this straightforward recon assignment was going to turn out, he would probably have retired then and there. Tonight, history was going to be made. And it wasn't the discovery of radium, first man on the moon, happy kind of history. It was the Spanish Inquisition. Here comes the Hindenburg bad kind of history. Bad for humans and fairies. Bad for everyone. I kind of am feeling like my prediction might be coming true. Seems like things aren't going to go well. I'm going to pause here and I'm going to end this video. Okay, there's still a good chunk of the chapter left. We may even split this up into 3 parts. We'll see how it's going, okay? So I'm going to end right here. We're about a half to a third of the way through chapter 3. So if you want to continue on, you can just go right to the next video. If you want to take a little break and come back later, that's totally okay. Either way, I hope you're enjoying the story so far. I can't wait to see what happens next.